3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GrokTALK.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GrokTALK.com.
GrokTALK.
GrokTALK is brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers and the bloggers at GraniteGrok.com. Thanks for listening to the live show. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. And you can listen to this in past programs on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, and Stitcher.
YouTube.
And we are on YouTube and, of course, Ustream if you're watching the Ustream or the Spreaker live stream audio. Those are choices that you have available to you, and we like to continue to expand those choices. And we're looking at getting into broadcast in various ways online. We're always looking for ways to expand our reach and to get more people to listen to the show. So in that vein, we like to have guests who know a lot of things about a lot of stuff that we don't always know about. And Mike Ferris is a constitutional appellate litigator who served as lead counsel in the United States Supreme Court, 8 federal circuit courts, and the appellate courts of 13 states. He is one of the original co-authors of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, is the chancellor of Patrick Henry College, and chairman and founder of the Home School Legal Defense Association. Welcome to the show, sir.
It is my pleasure to be with you in New Hampshire, great state.
Thank you very much for coming on. So we want to talk about, or actually we planned to talk about, we can go anywhere you want, of course, about the recent Supreme Court ruling on same-sex marriage.
Unfortunately, that decision attacks two of the most basic principles of what it means to be a country called the United States of America, and that is the principle of self-government and the principle of fundamental rights. Self-government is that we elect legislators to make the rules. Or, at the state level, we can have direct democracy of the people vote on things at the state level. For example, marriage. 32 states voted to say we want to have marriage to be recognized only between a man and a woman. And the Supreme Court said, nah, we think our political opinions are better than the opinions of millions of people. We're going to say it's going to be same-sex marriage that you have to approve. So either, in theory, in legal theory, the legislators elected by the people in 1868 legalized same-sex marriage when they created the Equal Protection Clause, or the Supreme Court made it up out of thin air. And of those two options, there's only one. And one is simply not possible if you're going to follow the Constitution properly, and it just violates the principle of American self-government. And in the meantime, they managed to tag on an attack on religious liberty that is going to come along with this.
Now, this is Skip Murphy, and I want to say thanks for coming on the show. We were, in the previous segment, we were talking about the proper role of government and religion, because we have Dan here in front of us who has brought suit about local officials not giving a tax abatement to the Church of the Sword. Now, I'm not sure what the theology is, but the general topic is government the proper role or the proper vehicle to decide what is a proper religion or not? And what we've been seeing from the Obama government is the twisting of the words in the First Amendment from being the free expression thereof to freedom of worship, which means get out of the public square and it's only good for being in your home or your house of worship. And we see a lot of the militant atheists doing the same thing, trying to push religious people of faith out of everything. And you're absolutely right with this decision. And I also relayed and posted up on GraniteGrok.com. Good friend of mine who reads the Grok all the time, their church just decided this past week to no longer hold weddings. So on this topic, how far is this slippery slope going to go with this recent decision?
Well, it remains to be seen. The decision itself is a decision about state government's duty to issue marriage licenses, according to the Supreme Court. Not a real duty, but a Supreme Court-imposed duty. And it does not directly attack churches and so on. but it does indirectly set the stage for those attacks. There will be requirements of either state law or local law or IRS regulations, or there's going to have to be some other additional layer of law, because a basic principle of constitutional law is the Constitution binds the government. I have no duty, either at my house or at Patrick Henry College or any other private entity that I'm involved with. I don't have any duty to guarantee equal protection of law or freedom of speech. I can tell people to shut up and go away. It's my house, it's my business, it's the college I run, and so on. So, but if I was running a government institution, then you have to obey the Constitution. And so, but private entities are controlled by statutes, regulations, and the like. And so we're going to see IRS regulations attacking churches, and we're going to see edicts from governors and state legislatures and city councils and so on, following the philosophy of the decision. And the Rainbow Commandos, as I've come to call them, are going to be out in force, making sure that all these kinds of local, state, federal mandates, laws, regulations will be on our backs in short order.
Now, one of the things I've been saying to this morning, probably more than I ever have in the last year, either speaking or writing, is the Hobbesian model of Leviathan government. Are we at that tipping point? Because, as you rightly point out, everything is now controlling what can be done within what was supposed to be civil society, and now down to the individual level. Are we, in short order, no longer be able to say the land of the free, because everything that is now free is only because government has not yet prescribed it? I think you're exactly right. And to return to your religious liberty point, it's the best way to tell, because what preceded religious liberty were so-called tolerance laws. And tolerance laws, you could be tried for heresy. The rule is basically this: if you didn't differ from the official Orthodox too very much, there were 5 specific areas allowed to disagree from the Church of England in the Tolerance Acts of William and Mary, for example. If you only disagreed in those 5 acceptable areas, you were tolerated. Otherwise, you were tried for heresy and burned at the stake. And that's what we're seeing in our society today. We don't burn people literally at the stake, or at least not yet, but we're burning businesses at the stake with $135,000 fine on bakers for not baking a cake. And it's just simply, we are and to your point earlier, we are losing the free exercise of religion. The freedom of worship is not what this country was founded upon. It was the free exercise of religion. It was the right to bring your religion into the public square and stand up. Religious people have the right to stand up and say what they want to say based on their religious belief, just as much as the atheist has the right to stand up and say what he wants to say based on his atheism. But a free country cannot exist where we lose the difference between tolerance and liberty. A liberty-based country is free. A tolerance-based country is not free. It's socialist. It's big government. It is the worship of the state. No, and I think you're absolutely right there. We are getting to the point where government is saying what is the public morality to a large degree. We've moved away from the idea of having that little guy on your shoulder saying, no, 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 you really don't want to do that, and most people obeying those, to where, my favorite example is Al Gore accepting lots of donations from Chinese monks, and he said that there was no legal authority to prevent him from doing that. He's looking at the external laws instead of the internal morality, and that's what progressivism, socialism is. That is the morality where they encase you in bars of law, bars of steel, and to heck with what you think yourself. And do you see that starting to happen at a faster and faster pace?
The pace is dizzying. I've been doing religious liberty litigation for, almost 40 years, 39 years this year, and I can believe it, but on the other hand, I can't really believe it. I step back and say, is this really America anymore? And we are at a tipping point, but we have to make a decision what kind of country we're going to be in. If we go along and acquiesce in this and don't take effective, smart, savvy political action right now to change it, which basically means moving the game from Washington, D.C. to the states. And there are ways we can do that. But if we don't do that, we are toast, because the cabal of big media, big cities, and big government has got a stranglehold on Washington, D.C., and there is no relinquishing it. And the people in those sectors all believe that the purpose of government is to provide for our needs and to run people's lives. The people in most of America think the purpose of government is to protect life, liberty, and property and punish those who do evil. The second group believe in freedom. The first group believe in socialism, and they do not mix.
Well, certainly, if you say bring it to the states, we all here would agree with you in the power of the states, because it was the states that created the federal government in the first place and really believe in federalism. But all I have to do is look at the very sorry example that Jim Pence in Indiana had. To great fanfare, they proposed Mike Pence. Thank you, Mike.
That's why he knew Mike. Go ahead.
Mike. No, not on Wednesday. But in great fanfare, they introduced their own religious freedom law, and then 2 days later, they bowed down to, you called them the Rainbow Warriors, we call them the Gestapo here. And they absolutely retreated. So it comes down to, who can we trust anymore? If nobody is willing to stand up, other than Bobby Jindal, who did it by executive order, what good are the states?
Well, it's a good point, a fair point, and I was really disappointed in Mike Pence. But I have a good friend who's a state senator in Indiana. He actually used to work with me, and he said it wasn't, as I call them, I'm going to get my term correct, the Rainbow Commandos. It wasn't those people, or the Gestapo. That's a great term also. It was Apple Computers and Alaska Airlines. It was the corporate warriors that basically blackmailed that state into submission. They would have weathered the storm if it was just the gay radicals. They would have just kind of shrugged their shoulders and taken it for a couple of days. But it was those big businesses, and so as consumers and people, we have to basically say we have to punish those people. If they're going to use their corporate power to accomplish those objectives, Walmart, for heaven's sakes, Walmart was doing the same thing to the governor of Arkansas, and so if we continue to just go our way and buy Apple products and shop at Walmart and all those things, and we don't, if we just one by one quit, that ain't going to mean anything to them. What we have to do is organize efforts to say, you know what, if that's going to be the way you use our money once you buy your products, we're not going to go there anymore. We can fight fire with fire if we have the will to do it.
Hey, Mike, I think we originally booked this for 15 minutes. Can you stick around for a little longer?
Sure.
Okay, we're going to take a really, really quick break. Stay on the line, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Welcome back to GrokTALK. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, Dan Hines, and Max Abramson. Our guest is Mike Ferris. We're talking about the Constitution, religious liberty, constitutional law. He's a founder of the Homeschool Legal Defense League Association. Maybe we'll get to that in a minute, but we want to continue on this topic. And Skip wanted to read something first, Mike, before we get back to the questions.
Yeah, Mike, I have a page at Granite Rock called Progressives and the Proper Role of Government and Your Subservience to It. Here's a couple of quotes. New Hampshire State Rep. Chris Roberts, Democrat. Government has to protect us from our own stupidity. New Hampshire State Rep. Lee Webb, Democrat. The role of government is to legislate behavior. New Hampshire State Senator Sharon Carson, the role of government is to make people better.
A Republican.
Yep. New Hampshire State Rep. Laura Pantelokis, Democrat. I don't care about protecting people's liberty. New Hampshire State Rep. John Mann, Democrat. Liberty is either an ideology or a gross misrepresentation and oversimplification, accidental or otherwise, of what government is for. New Hampshire State Rep. Cynthia Chase, Democrat. Concerning the Free State Project, having chosen New Hampshire as their destination state, even as she did as a Rhode Island transplant, what we can do is to make the environment here so unwelcoming that some will choose not to come and some may actually leave. One way is to pass measures that will restrict freedoms that they think they will find here. New Hampshire State Rep. Deborah DeSimone, Republican. The Constitution is a guideline. New Hampshire State Rep. New Hampshire State Sandra Keynes, Republican, now Democrat. Now this is a person who is creating our laws. And I'm going to ask you a question right after this. I don't try to justify anything by the Constitution. It's not my job, and I don't want to do it. Now, you listen to these people, and they are actually, well regarded in the Democrat Party.
Even the Republicans.
Yeah, even the Republicans. But you mentioned it earlier, and I'm going to say, what happened to the notion by our lawmakers that there is a limiting principle to government?
Well, it got drilled out of us by incremental measures, and people bought into the course of government over time. I mean, it started at, you can draw threads back a long ways, but in earnest, it began during the era of Comrade FDR. I mean, President FDR.
Oh, you're fine with that with us.
Oh yeah, don't you worry. My list of communists includes people who others don't, like Teddy Roosevelt and Richard Nixon.
So, in any event, we have been pursuing a philosophy of government for a long time. I mean, it comes in fits and starts, and it's been incrementally adapted and adopted. But these people are reflecting really clear understandings of the left's position on this. Now, my favorite, by the way, is that the Constitution is a guideline, because I say something similar to that a lot. I call that the Pirates of the Caribbean position, because in that you remember where the young woman appealed to the rules of parlay, and the pirate says, "They're not actually rules; they're more like guidelines." So I think you should call her the Pirates. That's the pirate position that she's just articulated. And people need to read something that's worth reading, like the Declaration of Independence. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For this reason, governments are instituted among men. So, translate, the purpose of government is to protect the liberties of the people that are given to them by God. That's it.
Yeah, and I have a quick one there. I mean, I greatly appreciate you having founded Patrick Henry College. One of my favorite quotations, which I sign my email with, is, "The Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government."
Amen and amen. And so, I mean, there was an article in Atlantic Magazine this week, or at least I read it this week, about the Supreme Court decision. And the premise this was written by a professor of journalism, was that Christian colleges teach their students to obey the law, but the Christian colleges themselves were not planning to obey the law of the land, meaning the Supreme Court decision. And I had to write, on my Facebook page mainly, a piece that criticized that said, look at. These are not government colleges. These are Christian colleges. They're private schools. They have no duty to obey the Constitution. The Constitution is there to protect them, not to regulate them. And you got professors, and you got judges at times saying the same stupid stuff. Usually not that stupid. I mean, stupid, but not that stupid.
I disagree.
Well, okay. Give me the word usually, but It's a bizarre system that we live in, where we're violating a statement by George Nicholas at the Virginia Ratification Convention. It's one of my favorites, and it is, an enlightened people will never allow that which is intended for their liberty to become an instrument of tyranny. And they were talking about the Constitution, and the prediction was the Constitution was going to be perverted, and it would become an instrument of tyranny. And Nicholas was saying, no, look, if we have enlightened people, meaning people that know the Constitution, know what it's supposed to mean, they know what's going on in their government, and they compare what's going on in the government to the Constitution, and when they see a disparity, they'll take action and stop their government from violating the Constitution. That was the expectation that our Constitution was built upon. And it works really well if the people live up to that expectation. It works really badly if we think that the government officials themselves are going to live up to that expectation by the voluntary goodness of their hearts.
So, Mike, we have a situation where we have people in power and in government, and all three branches of government, mostly the judiciary and executive, where the Constitution doesn't really mean much. There isn't much that they're interested in following. It's not there to constrain them by any stretch. They don't care what the Declaration of Independence meant or said or what we think it means. And the media obviously repeats that message and supports the violations that they engage in. So how do we address this problem and come forward towards a constitutional nation? How do you compete with ideas, or how do you defend your liberty in this environment?
Well, I mean, there's 100 different answers to that, but let's just take one that's really low-hanging fruit. If we can transfer issues back to the state government, does that mean our state government's going to be angels? Well, the quotations you just read me from your state legislators shows that ain't true. But the good news is it's much easier to remove a member of the New Hampshire House than it is to remove a member of the United States Senate. It's just the politics of it are so much different. And so, you simply make them eat those quotes. Every person in their district, you walk their district, you punish them for their constitutional and hatred. They hate the Constitution, what it amounts to. I mean, we can put fancy words around it if we want to, but that's what it amounts to. And in New Hampshire, I think it would matter. I think people will lose votes. And if we are able to consistently hold people to their constitutional duties, it will matter. I mean, I've been focused in the last couple of days on this Iran treaty, among other things. And I kind of have career ADHD, and I do a lot of different stuff. I about 5 years ago got an LLM in Public International Law from the University of London. So mainly because I wanted to fight UN treaties being adopting the United States, and I wanted to have the credentials to do that with. So in the process, I got a degree in what amounts to treaty law. And so this Iran deal that we're dealing with, 98 senators, including every Republican running for president, Cruz, Rubio, all of them, Graham, and the third one, Rand Paul, all of them voted to change the process from the process outlined in the Constitution. Yeah. The process outlined in the Constitution is you go negotiate a treaty, Mr. President, you bring it back to us, then we read the treaty, we see what's in it, and we decide if we like it, and then if two-thirds of us agree on behalf of our constituents, that two-thirds of us agree that we want to enter into this entanglement with this other country, then we approve it. And instead, by a simple majority vote process, they agreed to turn the tables and have to repeal by a two-thirds majority vote the treaty that Obama has negotiated. All the Republican candidates for president voted for that. They voted to disobey the Constitution, and now they have buyer's remorse. They see what's in the treaty and go, oh, no, we don't want to ratify that. They gave away the game when they decided not to follow the Constitution. And we've got to call people out on that. We've got to say, okay, if you think you're going to be a constitutionalist, Ted Cruz, and you did that, no, you're not a constitutionalist. You may be something conservative, but you're not a constitutionalist. Rand Paul, you think you're a constitutionalist? You did that, you're not a constitutionalist. You voted to change the Constitution so that you gave Obama the power to not only do all kinds of other bad stuff, he wants to take $11.9 billion from the American taxpayers and give it to Iran. And we don't have a vote on that? Well, thank you, guys. You did a good job.
That's incredible. So a plain law cannot change the Constitution, so why don't they just declare by a simple majority vote, you know what, after review, this is a treaty and it will not pass until it has a 2/3 majority. And, dear Mr. Ayatollah, this will be thrown out by the next president, which is what Tom Cotton said.
If they had a spine, you might see that. I've been working for the last couple days on trying to figure out a way to sue them over this, to have the treaty declared unconstitutional. But the Supreme Court has adopted rules that make it really, really hard for anybody to have legal standing to do that. Now, I think I've found some. I think I've got a path, but I'm not ready to announce it publicly yet. But I am working to bring a constitutional challenge to this treaty. But really, one way to do it is if 34 U.S. senators would rise up and say, "Look, we were wrong, and we will stand together, and we will file the lawsuit," they would have standing. But to get 34 Republican senators, or Democrats, really, but just start with Republicans, 34 Republican senators said that our vote was unconstitutional, and we're willing to file a lawsuit challenging all this. Good luck with that, unfortunately.
Well, they need to admit they're wrong. Senator Marco Rubio is also a U.S. Senator who's also running for president. He's been up to New Hampshire a number of times. Saw him speak at Americans for Prosperity a few weeks ago. Now, how many members of Congress are running for president right now?
4 or 5.
Well, yeah.
And can we hold their feet to the fire as presidential candidates, since we are in New Hampshire and we have the first of the nation primary?
Well, I think you hold your feet to the fire by simply saying, we're going to support somebody else. I mean, that behavior needs to be punished so badly. People will say, not only these guys need to be punished, anybody in the future who wants to run for president, and they do something like that again, they go, remember the lesson of 2016. If you support and run around the Constitution on how we adopt treaties, you're going to get your head handed to you when you run for president. That lesson needs to be marked down and remembered for 40 or 50 years.
All right, Mike, we're all out of time. How can people get in touch with you or reach you online?
I do a lot on my Facebook page. It's just Michael Ferris. So if they look for a public figure Facebook page. But hslda.org is the website for homeschooling issues. Patrick Henry College is at phc.edu, and I do a lot of work with the Convention of States process called conventionofstates.org.
All right, Mike, thanks so much for being on the show. Have a great weekend.
You too, guys.
All right,
Goodbye.
thanks. Goodbye. All right, that's it. Coming up next is, where'd my list go? Lawrence McQuillian, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
Jean Shaheen and her allies are making false claims about her record on veterans. The truth? Shaheen refused to meet with veterans pushing for reform. She wasn't on the committee that wrote the reform legislation and refused to co-sponsor important VA reforms in the VA Management Accountability Act until after the VA scandal broke. When our veterans needed her, Jean Shaheen was AWOL. Tell Jean Shaheen to stop distorting the truth and fix the VA.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Croc TV.